Throughout the decades, flying cars have always been the staple of future technology. We see them in our movies, our games, and in our books. Flying cars have always been the dream pretty much ever since the Model T hit the road. But although there's been many attempts, they've all failed. Is the flying car destined for failure? Or does it have a future? And is it even a good idea in the first place? Well, in this video, we're going to talk about the history of the flying car and the potential future. I'm the little green dude, and let's get started. It all started in 1917 with the Curtiss autoplane. It is considered the very first attempt at creating a flying car or roadworthy aircraft. It had wings that could be removed to allow it to be driven on the road. It featured a car-like chassis with 4 wheels. The aircraft was powered by a Curtiss V8 engine, which provided both the necessary power for driving on the road and flying in the air. In 1917, Glenn Curtiss demonstrated the autoplane at the Pan American Aeronautic Exposition in New York. However, even though the concept did gain a lot of attention, the autoplane faced several challenges, including the limitations of the technology of the time, the weight of the vehicle, and the complexity of making an aircraft suitable for road use. Proved to be too much, and the project was ultimately abandoned. The vehicle never achieved true flight and only managed to do short hops. Moving on to 1947, there was another attempt with the Convair Model 118. 2 prototypes were built and they were actually capable of flight. These vehicles were intended for the average consumer. The vehicle was made up of 2 parts. The lower half looked like a traditional car and operated like one, and the upper half was essentially just a prop motor with a set of wings attached. The vehicle was capable of flight, and despite the way it looked, it was pretty good at it. The public was getting excited. But then on November 18, 1947, disaster struck. Due to a fuel gauge malfunction, test pilot Reuben Snodgrass ran out of fuel mid-flight and had to make an emergency landing, which ended up destroying the prototype. Thankfully, Reuben managed to escape with just minor injuries. The public's perception of the vehicle waned after the accident, and in 1948, the project was cancelled. And then, in the early 2000s, an inventor named Paul Muller decided to give it a try, and created the Skycar M400. By far, one of the coolest looking flying cars to date, looking more like a sports car, it got a lot of attention. It was capable of vertical takeoff and landing, and it was also able to fit in a standard garage. However, due to financial problems, the Skycar was never able to enter production, and the project was ultimately abandoned. Now, there were many other attempts, but what do they all have in common? They've all failed. None of these vehicles were ever able to enter production. And you have to ask, with this many failed attempts, maybe the flying car isn't a good idea after all. But before we move on, it's time for this video's sponsor, the subscribe button. I'm sorry, I bet that's really annoying, but I'm trying to get to 500 subscribers, and it would be greatly appreciated if you stuck around. And now that the shameless plug has been placed, let's move on and talk about, is the flying car a good idea? The concept of flying cars have long captured the imagination of humanity, fueled by the futuristic visions of soaring through the skies and flying right over that pesky traffic. While this dream may seem enticing, it's essential to consider the potential drawbacks associated with the widespread adoption of flying cars. Just think about how terrible the drivers are on our roads. Imagine if they were all flying and could go anywhere. You could be sitting in your backyard when suddenly a Honda Civic falls on your head because they were distracted sending a tweet. And don't get me started on the destruction flying cars could cause. Regular ground-based cars could cause a lot of destruction. Flying ones would cause so many new problems, like airports for example. Flight control already has to worry about thousands of planes, as well as drones, birds, and weather balloons and whatever else is up there. According to Google, there are 290 million cars in the US alone. Even if just 20% of those cars were flying, that's still 58 million cars. And another thing, how do you stop these cars from driving somewhere you don't want them to? It's easy to control ground-based cars. You can just build barriers or fences to stop people from driving somewhere you don't want them to. But how are you supposed to stop someone in a flying car from flying over a military base or something? Another thing to keep in mind is how much noise these cars would make. I'm not sure what kind of engines these cars would have, but assuming they have a propeller or a jet engine, they would be making a lot of noise. There are ways to reduce highway noise. A very common way is to plant trees along highways, which block a lot of the noise. But from my knowledge, there's no way to stop noise coming from the sky. Now, some of these issues could be fixed by making them self-flying. You just tell the car where you want to go, and the car does the rest, while you sit back and relax. Ideally, the car will know where all the restricted areas are, and will automatically avoid airliners and other flying cars. But that still wouldn't be perfect. This wouldn't get rid of the noise issue, and even if they were all self-flying, this would still cause problems for airliners. Having millions of flying cars in the sky would definitely cause delays and all kinds of problems. And I know, some of you are going to tell me we don't need airliners if we have flying cars. But I'm pretty sure we'll still need airliners. Up to this point, flying cars have been pretty slow, and probably don't have enough fuel to fly overseas. And these cars will probably be too expensive for the average consumer, meaning we would probably still need some airliners. That being said, are there any flying cars in development today? This is the PAL V Liberty. Out of all the flying cars that are in development, the PAL V seems to be the most promising. In March 2022, the PAL V Liberty has obtained European road admission for road use, which means it's allowed to be driven on public streets, at least in Europe, and it's in the process of getting certified for flight. It's in the final stage of compliant demonstration, and once it completes that, it will be allowed to fly and be licensed. Once they receive certification, PAL V will begin production, and hopefully you'll finally be able to buy a flying car for the low price of $400,000. Oh, and don't forget to bring your private aircraft license. What's that? You don't have one? Well, you can get one for about $15,000. Yeah, the flying car is pretty much just for the super rich for now. Some honorable mentions would be Alaf Aeronautics and XPeng, which are also in development but don't seem to be anywhere close to being finished. Alaf's flying car was stated to cost $300,000, and XPeng's flying car is reportedly going to cost $137,000, which I find hard to believe, but we'll just have to wait and see. In conclusion, we've been trying to make flying cars a reality for more than 100 years. And as cool as the idea of having a flying car is, I don't think it's a good idea. Flying cars cause all kinds of problems, and are way too expensive for the average person. But who knows, maybe with autonomous technology and a lower price tag, it will finally become a reality. But for now, we'll just have to wait and see.
Okay.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, why not check out my other videos? The video on the left is about the time the US accidentally launched a manhole cover into space, and the video on the right is something YouTube thinks you'll enjoy. And as always, if you enjoyed the video, leave a like and subscribe if you want. And until next time, goodbye.